Welcome to Stuck Time to Improv. I'm Mary Scott with Business Drift, and I want startups to be wildly successful. Today, we're going to be talking to an investor about co-founder relationships. Welcome, Lisa Frusztajer.
Thank you so
How
much,
are you
Mary,
doing,
to be
Lisa?
here.
First of all, we can talk about why co-founders are more likely to succeed than single founders, right?
Yeah, and it's very interesting. There's a lot of data that indicates that businesses that start with co-founders attract more capital and tend to succeed. And part of it is that you're not in it alone. And then the other thing is co-founders can cover different areas. Ideally, they have complementary skills. So they support one another and they have complementary skills. It is a well-known aspect of companies that tend to do better than solo founders. Now, that doesn't mean it's always easy.
What are the stumbling blocks that frequently co-founders face?
It's interesting. A lot of it is really fundamental to the relationship because when you're running a startup, it's intense. There can be a lot of pressure. And the one thing that you know is that things change really quickly, but in unpredictable ways. And you can't exactly lay out an orderly plan for the future because you never know what's going to happen. So there are lots and lots of areas in which co-founders will encounter things that they disagree on because of the unpredictable nature of a startup. And one of the things that I say, so I'm an investor, but I'm also a coach. And when I coach founders on co-founder issues, one of the things I tell them is that it is perfectly normal for there to be tension and issues. There's nothing wrong with you if that's what's happening. And
Right.
you just have to really um, acknowledge that the conflict that comes up, the normal part of a startup, but it also brings up all kinds of issues because a lot of us don't like to engage in conflict. We avoid it. A lot of us like to be liked. And so we're afraid that if there's co-founder tension, then it's going to be bad not only for the relationship between me and the co-founder, but actually really bad for the business.
Right. And every so often, somebody's got to be the devil's advocate because it's about the success of the business, not necessarily what you think should be done.
That's exactly right. But it takes some getting used to the idea that healthy disagreement is actually a productive thing. A lot of us are not trained to operate in that kind of environment. And I think women in particular sometimes equate disagreement with confrontation. Healthy disagreement is just what it says it is. It's a very, very healthy and productive way to pressure test the business, look at various options, not just one path.
Okay. So what are some of the other things that you've encountered that you think people need to pay attention to in this co-founder journey?
I'll tell you what I counsel people to do. So the first thing is what we've just been talking about, which is this is all very normal. It's going to bring up things that characterize the relationship, but it's also going to bring up things in your past. If you have been conflict avoidant, or if you have not had practice resolving disagreements in these very intense relationships. So the thing that I advise people to do, first and foremost, is look at this as a day forward issue. Try to let go of the past and focus on why is this an issue and why do you want to make a change? Frame it in such a way that it's really about what's good for the business and not necessarily resolving past issues in the relationship. Your goal is not to be right or to win an argument. It's to do what's good for moving the business forward. And then I advise people to just envision what is the future state that you want to get to and test that future state And by that, I mean test your thinking about the future state. So, in other words, ask yourself a few key questions. Are you forward looking and free of blame? Are you really at the point where you can let go of past interactions and history and context? Does the area that you want to address call on people's best qualities and aspirations and intentions, both for the people and for the business? So you can see how these questions really parse out what is the high stakes emotional nature of the relationship with what's going to move the business forward and set co founders on a better path moving forward. So, number one, this is totally normal. Number two, be really clean on what is the future state that you envision. And to the extent that you can, make it not personal. Make it about bringing out the best in the business and in you.
Sure.
And then the
And
third thing,
there's more than one right way to do something. And if you can get along with a co-founder, you're going to do better at delegating to employees, right?
that's exactly right. Part of one of the beautiful byproducts of going through this process is that the people who I work with really get clear on their strengths and their weaknesses. And when they can acknowledge that their co founder also brings strengths to the table and complementary strengths in most cases, that makes it a lot easier to depersonalize the discussion. That's a really good point. And then the next thing that I advise people to do is focus on just one key area. Having tough conversations with your colleague and with your co founder is something that takes a little bit of practice. So get really narrow in your focus. Don't try to resolve all the issues, just that one area. And then plan for possible responses, both on the part of your co founder, but also what's going to come up for you. And just pay attention to the fact that you might get defensive or your co founder might get defensive. You might get confrontational. They may get confrontational. And then the fourth thing that I tell people to do is, okay, start the conversation. So you've thought it through, you've envisioned the future state, you've figured out how you're going to support yourself, but initiate the conversation early. Don't let things fester. Forewarn the other person that you're going to have a conversation about a particular topic, gather the facts, and then in the conversation, focus on that one area that you want to resolve. And if you start drifting off onto other topics, keep bringing it back to that one area. Make it concrete, make it depersonalized, make it focused on a better future.
Right. Ground rules, like really internalize it's not personal, it's business.
Yes.
And people
Easier
can
said
you
than
can
done.
agree to disagree and put that on the table and talk about something else that needs to be resolved.
That's right.
But
That's right.
ground rules, who's the final decision maker in certain areas? You know, sometimes one person is the financial genius and the other is the production genius, and they need to be able to be the decision maker in those circumstances. So yeah, communication and ground rules makes all the difference, right?
It's interesting that you call out who's the decision maker in particular, because in a lot of startups, that is not really clearly defined. And co-founders will get to that over time. It's not an easy thing, though. It requires these difficult conversations to figure out whose sphere is whose.
Lisa Frusztajer, thank you so much for these great tips on co-founder relationships. We'll put links in the comments about how you can get a hold of Lisa and get some more information from her. This is Mary Scott with Business Riff. I want startups to be wildly successful. And one of the best things you can do is book a synergy call with me at businessriff.com. And join us again next time for Stock Time to Improv.